Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Excellent job. Thank you so much for that.
Northern Illinois Steam Power Club is to highlight our country's industrial heritage and agricultural heritage. We think that it's important to take a look back in time every once in a while to appreciate where we are now and maybe get a little bit of a blueprint as to where we're going. And the first machine you're seeing coming up the lane is a prime example. This is one of only 3 in existence. You will not see another one more than likely out and running. It's a John Deere Joe Danes built in 1918. What's interesting about this machine is John Deere, back in the early days, did not produce tractors. They produced horse-drawn implements only. They thought the tractor business was too volatile. They didn't want anything to do with it. And they were a very small company at the time, eclipsed by companies like International Harvester. But they thought it would be prudent to come up with a design of their own in case they ever wanted to enter the tractor market. And that is this machine right here. It's a prototype Joe Dane all-wheel drive tractor. It has a 4-cylinder Mick Vicker engine, being driven by Taylor Sunderledge. It's owned by the Northern Illinois Steam Power Club. Like I say, one of 3 in existence. There's a 4th one being assembled out of spare parts. The legend goes that in 1918, when John Deere bought the Waterloo Engine Works, they recalled the 100 experimental Danes and rounded them up and destroyed them. This is one of the only ones that got away. Thanks, Taylor. We've got John Deere Model A and the club's Green Team Tractor Project. So if you have a youngster with you here today that loves the old tractors and everything, they can join the Green Team. Here's Mike Luce with some of the current Green Team members. It's a great opportunity to become involved with the club, turn some wrenches, learn some mechanical skills, and just have fun and meet friends who are interested in the same thing. So, if you're interested in joining the Green Team or learning more, we have some information on our website, or you can visit the membership desk inside of the Founders Building. So our club first got its beginnings in 1955 when a group of local DeKalb County farmers decided they wanted to bring in the wheat harvest the old-fashioned way. There was a couple people around the country that had already done that, and they were having a great time. So they decided they were going to pull an old steam engine and threshing machine out of the barn, just like the 2 you see here, and fire them up. And aside from the physical labor aspect of it, it's a great way to just remember the past and the people who came before us, appreciate how hard things used to be, and have some fantastic camaraderie with like-minded individuals. So this is one of the engines that's been here for a very long time. This is a double simple Frick Eclipse. Frick did not rate their engines in terms of horsepower, but in terms of the size of the cylinders. So this is an 8.5 by 10. That's an 8.5 inch bore by 10 inch stroke. Double simple means that each cylinder only uses steam once before it's being exhausted out the stack. Frick Eclipse is like saying something akin to a Toyota Corolla. So the Frick company built this engine, and Eclipse was sort of the model name because it would quote-unquote eclipse the competition. We've got them pulling their Minneapolis threshing machine. This is the original combine. So the word combine comes from the joining of a power source like the Frick with a threshing machine like this Minneapolis here. This machine's owned by the, well, both of these machines are owned by the Petersons from Hampshire. Any whistles up there, guys? Any more? I know there's one more. All right, thanks for bringing it through. Next up, we have a very, very unique machine here. This is a 21 and 75 horsepower Baker. This is a Uniflow engine. In their later years, Baker offered three sizes of engines, a 19 horse, 21, and a 23 horse, so this is a good mid-sized machine. What's interesting about the Baker Company, they were out of Swanton, Ohio, and this machine is made pretty late on in their histories from 1925, but Abner Baker, the founder, he was more interested in steam engines than the agricultural equipment like threshing machines. So the steam engines in his company came first, which was very unusual. This is one of the most efficient traction engines ever made. It has what's known as a Uniflow cylinder. So on a normal engine, the steam leaves the boiler, goes through a cylinder, does its work, and then has to pass back through a valve before being exhausted. The Uniflow, it has one continuous flow path through the cylinder, so everything stays hot, you get a little bit more efficiency. Another part of the Peterson family collection, looks like we got Sophie and Lester up there. Any whistles? Any more? All right, thank you for bringing it through. Here we have a very, very special machine, historically significant to the club here in Sycamore. This is a product of the Illinois Thresher Company. It was built right here in Sycamore on Park Avenue. If anyone's familiar with the layout of downtown Sycamore, the Bloom & Martin's building is the remains of the Illinois Thresher Company factory. The Illinois Thresher Company was started by William Rumley, who came from a large agricultural company but wanted to go out on his own. This is one of only 6 left in the world, and of the 3 horsepower sizes, the 20, 22s, and 25s, that's the only 22 left in existence. Any whistles up there? All right, thanks for bringing it through. Proudly owned and restored by the Northern Illinois Steam Power Club. That's serial number 10, well, 110 out of 63 engines they were able to build before going bankrupt in the mid-1920s.
Now sometimes we're hearing 2 different numbers here. Now one number, right, is the drawbar power. The second number is belt power.
Well, not exactly. So this is a perfect example of that type of thing to talk about. So this is a Port Huron Longfellow. It's a 19 and 65 horsepower. So the 19 horsepower has to do with the heating surface in the boiler, and that gives you the boiler's horsepower, basically how much steam it's able to produce. The 65 comes from belt horsepower. That's what you can get off of the big flywheel on the bleacher side of the parade route. So this, for example, is a 19 and 65. It's rated at 19 boiler horsepower and 65 horsepower off of the belt pulley. This is part of the Gould family collection. They were formerly in Naperville, now they're up in Wisconsin. I forget the name of the town. But we've got Levi there at the throttle today, and Dad Joe at the steering wheel. Any whistles, guys? All right, thank you. Here we have our first case. So this is a 50-horse case. It's from 1914, owned by the Druin family out of Holcomb, Illinois. Case was the most prolific manufacturer of traction engines during the age of steam. They were able to build several thousands when, for example, the Baker we just saw, they only built about 1,000 or so machines. Case was centered out of Racine, Wisconsin. Back then it was J.I. Case, now it's Case I.H. They later merged with International Harvester. And like I say, this is a 50 horsepower model. It is the most popular of the late model cases. So these are very common because it's a good mid-sized engine for doing drawbar work, i.e. pulling a plow or so on, as well as running implements off of the belt pulley flywheel there. So we've got Austin at the throttle today, and Dad and little baby Eleanor at the wheel. Any whistles, guys? Thank you. Something interesting to note, here in the Midwest, we are fortunate to have several different types of fuel for these engines. A lot of people ask, well, what does it burn? Because you need a fire in there to boil all of the water and create steam. And depending on what region of the country you're in, that fuel source could vary a little bit. So in the southern United States, oil fuel was very popular because it's easier to handle. Here in the Midwest, we're fortunate to have a lot of coal and wood primarily. And out west on the Great Plains, where there were no trees or coal mines and it was expensive to bring that sort of stuff in, they even made engines that could burn straw out straight out of the threshing machine, so you would keep a net fuel bill of 0. All right, next up we've got another case. This is part of the Hubbard family collection there in Chena, Illinois. This is a 40 horse, a little bit smaller than the 50 we just saw. This one has sort of crossed the line to be more favorable towards belt pulley work exclusively. It can still pull a plow, but it's got somewhat smaller rear wheels and a somewhat smaller engine. We've got Clayton at the throttle today, and looks like Aaron, who's all the way from Virginia, is at the wheel. Now normally this engine has a spark arrestor on it, but that's a brand new smokestack up there, so they still got to put it up there. Part of the fun of these engines is there really aren't many drawings or blueprints left, so if something needs to be repaired, there's some reverse engineering that needs to go into it, such as a brand new stack. And there's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into these machines, which is just on the teetering point of being lost. And that's another part of what we try to do here at the Northern Illinois Steam Power Club, is preserve techniques of the past. Clayton is very involved. He's actually the groundskeeper at our sister show, the Rock River Threshery. They're in Edgerton, Wisconsin. They have a 4-day reunion just like us over Labor Day weekend. So if you like the sights, smells, and sceneries of the Steam Power Club here, please visit the Rock River Threshery in Edgerton. Now, Clayton, any whistles? Any more? All right, thanks guys. Okay, here we have another part of the Peterson family collection. Again, they're out of Hampshire, Illinois. This is a 20-horse Minneapolis. I believe this one was built in 1916. Minneapolises were renowned for being very easy to fire and very apt for drawbar work, such as pulling a plow or a road grader. We've got Sophie at the wheel and brother Danny at the throttle today. An interesting thing to note about Minneapolis is we have another one that's coming up just behind it. No two are painted the same. So these were built in Hopkins, Minnesota, which is just outside the Twin Cities, and they were next to an art college, the pressure company factory. So they would hire the art college students to come over and paint and pinstripe their engines. So no two Minneapolis traction engines you'll see are exactly the same cosmetically. Danny's pulling his water wagon and fuel tender behind him. These were useful if you were stuck in a belt pulley somewhere running a threshing machine. You could have your team of horses take that wagon and replenish the water and coal supply, so you didn't have to stop running and you could keep making money. Because for every second the engine stood still, you weren't making any money. Anyways, any whistles, Danny? All right, thanks. Okay, here we have a very, very special machine. This is its first appearance at the show. It is the oldest machine at the show this year. This is an 1884 Westinghouse. The Westinghouse Company was out of Schenectady, New York, and they built all kinds of stuff from turbo generators to agricultural machines. This is a 10 horsepower model, and it's fairly early on in the transition away from stationary, purely stationary power to a traction engine. What that means is originally you would have just a boiler that was mounted on wheels. You'd still need a team of horses to move it around from one place to another. This is one of the first steps in the evolution of farm engines in this country, where the machine could move itself from place to place. This is owned by Mike Stinson, who's there at the wheel. And we've got Amelia there, riding along. Something unusual about this and the next machine you're seeing, they have vertical boilers on them. They were very popular for compact places where space was at a premium. Again, this is the first step in the evolution away from horse-drawn mechanical power on the American farm. Any whistles? What's that peanut whistle sound like? All right, thank you. And here we have another very special machine. This is a 1925 Buffalo Springfield steamroller. I believe this is a 12-ton? 12 or a 10, something like that. 10, okay. This this is part of the Fruit Family collection. They are out of Kirkland. Another instance where a vertical boiler is useful because of its compactness. Notice there's no accommodation for the firemen. They had to just walk alongside while the operator, the engineer, got a nice comfortable seat and power steering. That's right, there's a special motor on this engine just for steering it. Otherwise, you have to Armstrong it. Any whistles? All right, thanks, you guys. Those are the machines that built the first paved roads in the United States after the coming of the automobile. So here we've got our second and last Port Huron. And we've got Andy at the throttle, and I've asked Andy to come through backwards because there's a lot of different ways people tried to get the most efficiency out of their engines 100 years ago. Those designs were standardized, and they were really just experimenting, so there's a lot of ways to achieve the same effect in a different format. This one, for example, this is what's known as a tandem compound engine. So, in physics, there's a law that says that pressure and diameter are interchangeable. What that means is you can get the same pushing force in a small diameter with a high pressure as a low pressure in a larger diameter. What that means is the steam is generated and leaves the boiler. First enters this small cylinder at boiler pressure, which is about 175 psi. By the time it's pushed the piston all the way back, it's lost a little bit of its heat energy and has gone down in pressure. So then it gets exhausted into the larger low pressure cylinder, pushes a second piston, which shares a common piston rod for the single crank, back the other way before then being exhausted out of the stack. So in essence, in theory, you're getting twice the amount of work for no extra fuel cost, which is why Port Huron could get away with having somewhat smaller boilers like this. This is part of the Runcie family collection. He's out of Maple Park. This engine was built in 1921. It was first owned by a gentleman named John Strupp of Wisconsin. And it was actually featured in the 1921 or 2 sales literature of Port Huron because he wrote a testimonial. He was in love with the engine. It was such an efficient, easy to handle machine. This one just went through a extensive restoration. It has a brand new boiler on it. It's in factory condition as it was in 1921. Again, Andy's at the throttle up there. Any whistles? All right, thank you. So after the late 1940s and 1950s, when steam power and agricultural heritage started to become a hobby like it is here now, not everybody could afford or had the space for a full-size steam tractor, but they may still have wanted to play with a steam engine of their own. And that's when you get machinists and hobbyists who start coming up with machines like these. So these are twin turning half-scale case traction engines. These are both half-scale 65s, I believe, which is a little bit bigger than the 50 horse we saw that Austin had a few minutes ago. Dimensionally, they are exact 1/2 shrinkage of a full-size 65 horse case. Just a little bit easier to tow around with, say, a pickup truck versus a semi, and a little easier to take care of, too. We've got Dave Stevens on my side here, and Kevin Palzinski on the far side, the bleacher side. Any whistles, you guys? Now, they may look small, but these engines are incredibly powerful, and as a matter of fact, last year, we put both of these on the sawmill together, and they have the combined horsepower to still turn out full-size board lumber. We'll probably do that again. It'd be pretty cool if you guys could figure that out. Yeah, that's a good show. All right, thanks, you guys. Here we have our second Minneapolis. This is a 24 horse. The Petersons earlier was a 20 horse. In their later years, post-1916, Minneapolis had a 16, 20, 24, and 28. So this is a little bit larger. It was primarily used for drawbar work. One keynote feature of the Minneapolis line is the large water tank in front of the smokestack. That was for additional water capacity, so you could get more horsepower than engine without stopping. Another interesting feature of this machine, most of the engines here have 2 methods to get water into the boiler. Obviously, you need water in the boiler to create the steam, which is what makes it go. So this one has a device called an injector, and it also has a duplex water pump, which is in essence a small steam engine. That's off to the crank side of the machine if you see it back by the operator. So instead of fiddling with an injector, which is a fussy way to put water in, it uses a Venturi effect. You can just crack this little engine on and it'll pump water nice and evenly in the boiler all day. All right, here we have the other double simple engine here on the grounds. Again, double simple means that in each cylinder, steam is only used once before being exhausted out of the stack. So you sacrifice a little bit of efficiency for added power. This is owned by the Staley family. They're out of DeKalb. This is a 22 horsepower double simple. Another note is the saddle tanks, the side tanks on this engine. Just a different place to have added water capacity. Another interesting feature of this engine is the fact that it has two flywheels. So there's a couple other double simple Technonomans like this. Those were built in Mount Vernon, Indiana, but you won't see any others with a second flywheel. At some point, somebody thought that they could balance the force of the engine out and have it be smoother running by adding the second flywheel so it would keep more momentum in the engine and it could respond to load changes differently. You got the whistle up there. Thanks for bringing it through, you guys. So steam power during the turn of the century and a little bit past that was not just on the American farm. It was everywhere. You could find it in little machine shops, in small factories. You even would find it in high schools. So one of the stationary engines in the Founders Building up there ran air conditioners and fans in a Chicago high school. So steam power was used for absolutely everything. And this is a good use of some of those smaller appliances that don't really have a place anymore, like the traction engine. So this is a formerly stationary boiler and a stationary engine, which has been mounted onto a truck chassis, and it's just a fun little device to get around with. This is owned by Bob Gelm. He's from Lombard, Illinois. I don't know the exact heritage on the equipment on that thing. Now I gotta talk to you about that. But any whistles up there? Alright, thank you. Oh, the whistle cord. Anyhow, that's a steam-powered doodle bug. You'll see quite a few of those around the Midwest. They can go quite fast. Some are even street legal.